Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. I still remember the night it started. Rain-slicked streets, neon reflections splitting across puddles, a cold city wind slipping under my coat. I'd moved here a month ago, carrying nothing but a suitcase and a quiet ache. A divorce, bruised pride, the kind of loneliness that hums behind your ribs when you try to sleep. I worked nights at the 24-hour drive-thru on the corner of 7th and Monroe. It was nothing glamorous, fluorescent light, humming fryers, coffee machines that whined like old ghosts. I liked the predictability. Customers spoke in clipped tones, cars rolled through like clockwork, receipts printing, speakers buzzing. I liked the quiet order, until the car came. It was always the same. Silver hatchback, tinted windows, rain streaking across the hood. And the voice. A calm, teasing baritone that sounded like it knew me already. 2 cheeseburgers, fries, a coffee. Please. I handed the bag through the window, and they laughed. Soft, familiar, like a shared joke. But when I glanced up, the lot was empty. Empty. No car waiting. No tire tracks on the wet asphalt. Nothing. The first time, I thought I'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the divorce had cracked my senses. But then it happened again. And again. Every night around 2:13 a.m. They never left their car in sight of the cameras. The order always came through. Always the same voice. The same laugh. I told myself it made sense. Maybe someone had a friend drive through and circle back. Maybe I was overthinking. I wanted to believe it. One rainy Wednesday, I lingered after closing. I'd been scrolling my phone, half listening to jazz through cheap earbuds, when the speaker crackled. "Hey, you okay?" I froze. The voice. Calm. Observant. Not a question, but a statement. An awareness. Yeah, just tired," I muttered. The speaker crackled again. "I saw your post this morning. About the apartment. It looked empty." I dropped the mop. My stomach sank. I hadn't posted anything public about moving. My apartment was my sanctuary, a fragile attempt at rebuilding myself. How could anyone know? I rationalized. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe some glitch. "It's nothing," I whispered into the speaker. But the voice kept coming. Always calm, always subtly intimate. They knew things. Small things. My favorite coffee, the song I hummed while cleaning, the brand of my toothpaste. Private habits, quiet routines. They remembered every small detail. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it made sense. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. Then the text started. A burner phone, always with the same tone. "You missed your train today. Did it annoy you?" I didn't even mention the train. I didn't tell anyone. I deleted the number, blocked it. But new numbers appeared. New profiles. Dating apps that seemed tailored. Photos subtly staged to mirror mine. Messages that referenced memories I hadn't shared online. I started checking the cameras, the feeds, the logs. Nothing. Every approach, every car, every shadow I saw on the road seemed erased in the footage. It was like watching a dream unravel in reverse. I began noticing the little things. Footsteps that weren't mine on the hallway outside my apartment. The humming of an appliance when I knew I'd turned it off. A notification buzz from a phone I hadn't touched. And then I met her. Not the voice, but her. In the small cafe across the street. She smiled like she understood loneliness. We talked. About books, the rain, music. About being new in the city. She listened. Really listened. I told her about the divorce. About the nights at the drive-thru. About the ache. She didn't flinch. Didn't judge. Just nodded. "You're cautious," she said. "That's okay. I get it." I wanted to believe her. I wanted safety. I wanted warmth. But then the little things started to twist. She knew my routines before I told her. My coffee order. The way I arranged my apartment. She remembered a song I hummed one morning in the shower. Small details buried in memory. I tried to rationalize. She's attentive. Thoughtful. Observant. Maybe I overshare. The car returned. the silver hatchback. Rain plastering its body, fog curling off the asphalt, and the speaker buzzed before I even opened my mouth. "Hi. Busy night." I froze, fingers hovering over the register. My heart tapped an uneven rhythm. "Yes, busy," I said, barely audible. "Thought you might like a hot drink," the voice said. I refused. They left, or maybe they never came. I couldn't tell anymore. The boundaries I'd thought were solid had dissolved in the fog. The texts escalated. Voice notes. Footage of me walking in the apartment lobby. Metadata from my own emails, tagged to show I had read messages I never opened. AI-cloned voices whispering secrets into my phone. Fake social profiles that mirrored my friends. I began documenting. Screenshots, recordings, timestamps. I became obsessed with tracking them, tracing every digital footprint. But the more I searched, the more impossible it became. Every lead looped back, erased itself, or contradicted the last. I started hearing the voice in unexpected places. On the bus, in my apartment hallway, even through the buzzing of my own phone. Each encounter was calm, intimate, almost tender, but always invasive. Always there. Then one night, I saw a reflection. My apartment window, rain-streaked, fogged. A figure behind me. Not a shadow. A presence. The face I'd trusted at the cafe. The voice I'd feared. The observer. I wanted to scream, but I whispered, "Why?" "You're fragile," they said, calm. "I wanted to keep you safe. To understand you. You wouldn't notice me otherwise." It wasn't affection. It was ownership. I called the police. They were skeptical. I had evidence, but it felt like piecing together smoke. Cameras showed nothing. Devices traced to burner phones dissolved in virtual smoke. Emails flagged as sent from me, but never typed. They told me to secure my devices, to document everything, and to avoid contact. But I knew it wasn't enough. They were everywhere. They had to be. I began setting traps. Emails laced with metadata, decoy social accounts, scheduled messages. Every tactic revealed a new layer. Someone obsessively watching, someone patient, someone emotionally intelligent enough to mirror my own fears and desires back at me. The confrontation came unexpectedly. A night thick with rain, my apartment floor wet from tracking mud. I heard a knock. Not at the door, but the window. My reflection fogged with the breath of someone outside. "Open up," I said, voice shaking. The figure smiled. Not maliciously, just observing. Calm. Precise. The police arrived minutes later, alerted by my silent alarm. Evidence was finally enough. Burner phones, fake profiles, AI files, metadata trails linking back to one individual. My stalker had been orchestrating every detail for months, a carefully constructed obsession. I never saw them again after that night. But the quiet in my apartment was different. I could hear it in the humming of the fridge, the buzz of my phone, the way shadows stretched across the walls. I moved again, choosing safety over comfort, walls over openness. But trust is fragile. It fractures even in daylight. I carry it with me like a scar behind my ribs, a memory that reminds me someone could always be watching, learning, mirroring, waiting. Sometimes I wonder if the silver hatchback was ever real, or if it was just a reflection of my own loneliness. A reminder that obsession doesn't need a face, just access. That control is subtle, emotional, and infinitely patient. And when the city sleeps and the rain taps against my window, I whisper a quiet truth to myself. Privacy is fragile. Identity is not yours alone. Trust is a risk. And some obsessions last longer than fear. Story 2. The first time I saw the toy, it was after midnight, and the restaurant already smelled like fryer oil, wet carpet, and the sweet metallic steam that hung in the air after the machine cycle ended. I was wiping the counter alone. Rain kept tapping the front windows. The neon sign outside turned the wet glass pink and blue in shifting reflections. A delivery truck hissed through the parking lot. Somewhere in the back, a cooler motor hummed with a tired, permanent sound. The Happy Meal toy sat under the soda machine. A little plastic clown, red hair, yellow face, fixed smile. I remember staring at it for too long, trying to decide whether one of the lunch staff had dropped it there earlier, or whether I had simply missed it in the chaos of the evening rush. It looked stupidly harmless, the kind of thing a child would forget without crying too hard. I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. The smile on its face had a scratch across it. Just one, fine and white, cutting the plastic curve of its mouth. I should have thrown it in the trash then. Instead, I set it on the lost and found shelf by the office door and went back to wiping tables. I was still learning how to be alone in this city. That was the truth of me before anything else happened. 3 months earlier, I had left my apartment in another state with 2 suitcases, one stolen hour of courage, and a bruise-shaped silence that had taken months to name. My ex used to say I was too nervous, too quiet, too easy to unsettle. He said it like he was diagnosing a flaw in a machine. By the end, I believed him more than I believed myself. So when I moved here and took a night manager job at a 24-hour fast food place on the edge of downtown, I told myself it was a reset. New city, new shift, new rules. I wanted to believe that. I told myself it made sense. The toy was gone when I came back the next night. I found it behind the ketchup station. Same clown, same smile, now with 2 scratches. One across the mouth, one across the left eye. I stood there in the fluorescent light, listening to the freezer compressor kick on and off behind me, and felt something settle in my stomach. Heavy, quiet, not fear yet, just the first shape of it. I checked the cameras. Nothing useful. The back of the restaurant, the break room, the dim stretch of hall outside the bathrooms, the parking lot under rain. The toy was not on any footage. It had simply appeared. I laughed once, because the mind will sometimes do that when it has no better defense. When I showed it to Tara in the morning, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're making it weird." Tara was the kind of person who survived by being blunt. She worked the drive-thru with a permanent frown and a voice that could cut through any lie. She took one look at the clown, frowned harder, and dropped it into the trash. I watched her do it. The bin sat by the prep sink. Black liner, grease stains, straw wrappers, 2 napkins. The clown landed on top with a soft plastic clack. That should have been the end of it. At closing, when I pulled the liner and tied it off, the toy was sitting in the sink. Dry, clean, facing up, smiling. Tara swore under her breath. Okay, that's not funny. No one had gone into the back room. The cameras showed no one. The doors had been locked. I carried the toy to the dumpster behind the building and tossed it in with the greasy bags and broken boxes. When I turned around, the alley was empty except for rain and the red pulse of the exit light. The next morning, it was on the manager's desk. I didn't sleep much after that. I kept expecting a reasonable explanation to arrive with the dawn. A prank, a coworker, a stupid chain of coincidences built from stress and lack of sleep. But the toy kept moving, lost and found. The freezer shelf, inside the employee microwave, in the glove box of the shift car. Each time I threw it away, it returned with another scratch. The face was changing. Not enough for anyone else to notice at first. Enough for me. The smile got thinner. The cheek on one side chipped. The eyes were starting to look uneven, as if the clown were learning how to hold an expression it no longer liked. A week later, I found it on the table in the staff room beside my coffee thermos. There was a note under it. Do not let it in. No signature. No handwriting I recognized. I checked the staff cameras again. The note had not been there earlier. Neither had the toy. I stood in the break room with the fluorescent light buzzing above me and realized I was breathing too fast. "Hey!" a voice said behind me. I turned. Jonas. He was the new regional maintenance consultant. Mid-30s. Clean jacket. Soft voice. The kind of man who seemed to lower the temperature of a room just by entering it. He had arrived 2 days earlier to inspect the back door locks and the freezer seals after a water leak in the alley wall. He looked at the clown, then at me. "You okay?" he asked. Something about the way he said it made me want to answer honestly. I didn't. Not fully. "I'm tired," I said. He nodded like he understood more than I'd given him. First month in a place like this is always the worst. Your body stays on alert even when you're off shift. I stared at him. He was right. That was the part that made me trust him. He wasn't comforting in a loud way. He didn't perform concern. He just said things that matched the shape of what I felt. By the end of that week, he knew my coffee order before I said it. He knew I listened to old jazz stations while closing because silence made me think too much. He knew I had a habit of checking the parking lot twice before I unlocked my car. How? I asked once, half smiling. He shrugged. You're observant. That should have been enough. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe he had simply watched the room the way competent people watch rooms. Then he mentioned my old apartment. Not the city, not the street, the apartment number. I had never told him. I just looked at him. He held up his hand slightly gentle. You said the rent here was cheaper than your last place. I remembered the listing from your phone when you showed me the schedule app. I didn't mean to pry. It was a small thing, probably explainable. Still, I felt the first real thread of unease pull tight inside me. The next night, after closing, the clown appeared in my car. It was on the passenger seat. Seatbelt fastened. A fresh scratch cut through the plastic smile. I stared at it with the engine off, rain striking the windshield in hard, impatient dots. I had locked the car. I knew I had. The headlights of a passing truck washed the interior white for a second, and in that flash I saw my own face reflected in the glass. Pale, unsteady, the kind of face that belongs to someone who is trying to reason with a thing that refuses reason. I called the police. They took a report without much interest. An officer asked if I had any enemies, if I had recently broken up with someone, if I was sure I hadn't misplaced the toy myself. I remember feeling embarrassed before I felt angry. That night I went home and checked every room twice. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator humming in the kitchen and the occasional crack of the building settling in the walls. I put a chair under the front door handle anyway. Then I went to bed with the lamp on. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice note. I pressed play. At first it was only static. Then a child's laugh. Then a woman singing in a kitchen somewhere, soft and off-key, the kind of song a mother forgets she is singing. Then my own voice. Not live. Recorded. Don't let it in, the voice said. I sat up so fast I nearly dropped the phone. The note continued for another second, then cut off. I listened again. It was my voice, or a version of it. Smoothed. Flattened. Too clean. AI maybe, or a manipulated recording. But it was close enough to make my skin go cold. The next morning, I was standing at the prep sink when Jonas came in with his usual calm expression and a paper cup of coffee for me. I did not tell him about the voice note. I told myself I was protecting myself from embarrassment, that I didn't want to sound paranoid. He set the coffee down and glanced at the lost and found shelf. The clown was there again. This time, it had 3 scratches. He watched it for a second too long. Has that thing been around a while? I asked. His eyes shifted back to me. Long enough. I frowned. What does that mean? He hesitated. Just a fraction. But I caught it. It means, he said carefully, some people in this building like routines. That should have made no sense at all. Instead, it made my stomach tighten. I began noticing things after that. A couple of staff members always touching the clown as they passed. Not with surprise. Not with disgust. With familiarity. Tara brushed it with 2 fingers and muttered, wrong side. Like she was correcting a placement. Our dishwasher, Eli, kept glancing toward the back door whenever the toy was near the office. I asked him why. He said too quickly, because it's not supposed to be on this side. When I asked what he meant, he shook his head. Nothing. Forget it. I didn't. The restaurant after midnight had a strange emotional architecture. You hear everything then. The ice machine cracking, the mop water sloshing in a bucket, cars sweeping past outside, a radio in the office playing distant jazz, so low it felt like memory instead of music. I started staying later, pretending to balance inventory while I watched. Every time the toy appeared, someone moved it away before I could touch it. Every time I threw it out, someone replaced it. The scratches multiplied. The smile became more and more distorted, the little plastic face gradually losing the shape of joy and becoming something smaller. Tired, angry, almost pained. Then one night, after the last customer left and the rain had turned into a cold fog that blurred the neon signs across the street, I found the toy in my apartment. It was on my bedside table, beside the lamp, beside the water glass I had left there before work. I didn't scream. I think I was too shocked for that. I stood in the doorway with my keys still in my hand and listened to the apartment's silence. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe clicked in the wall. Somewhere outside, a car rolled slowly through wet pavement. Then I saw the note under the toy. "You keep leaving the door open." My knees went weak. I called Jonas first. Not because I trusted him fully, because I was frightened enough to reach for the nearest warm voice. He came within 20 minutes. He looked at the toy, then at the bedroom window, then at the deadbolt. "Has anyone else been here?" he asked. "I don't know." It was the truth. He moved through the apartment with practiced calm, checking the closet, the shower curtain, the windows. He didn't treat me like I was foolish. That made me trust him more than I should have. Then he asked to see my phone. I hesitated. He noticed. "I'm not trying to control you," he said quietly. "I'm trying to help you understand what's happening." I gave it to him. He went through the recent calls and messages, then frowned at a profile on my dating app. A man I had matched with 3 weeks earlier. No picture, no bio, just a name, Aaron Voss. I stared at it. "I never swiped on that," I said. Jonas looked up. "Are you sure?" The room felt smaller. The lamp's light was too warm. My breath sounded too loud. He showed me the profile metadata. A linked account, reused photos, fake location markers, a web of burner numbers. He explained it calmly, almost gently. Then he said, "This isn't random. Someone has been building access to your life." I felt sick, not because of the stalking, because part of me already knew. The details I had been rationalizing, the remembered coffee order, my apartment number, the voice note, the way Jonas always knew where to stand in the room, the way some of the staff moved around the toy with almost ceremonial care. "Who is Aaron Voss?" I asked. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "A name used by more than one person." That was the moment the shape of the thing changed. Not one stalker, a campaign, multiple profiles, multiple hands, a shared obsession. The toy was a marker, a test, a signal. People in the restaurant had been passing it around because they believed the clown was a warning system, a way to track when the wrong person was near the door. Something had happened here before I arrived. Someone had been let in before. Someone had not come back. And the people who knew had decided that silence was safer than explanation. I remember laughing once then. A tiny broken sound. "You're kidding," I said. Jonas did not smile. "No," he said. "I wish I was." The police took it more seriously after that. There were recordings, messages, location data, a string of access attempts through employee logins and old delivery accounts. One of the false profiles had been messaging staff for months under different names, asking harmless questions, learning schedules, watching who stayed late. The toy had been moved by employees because it was part of their own private system. A code, a warning. Do not let it in. Not the clown. Something else. Someone else. The night they set up surveillance, I stayed inside the office with an officer and a frozen cup of coffee, while rain slapped the windows and the restaurant sat dark around us, every surface reflecting the white corridor lights. At 12:18 a.m., the back door handle moved. Slowly. Then the camera feed flickered. A shape stood outside in the fog. Not supernatural. Not monstrous. Just a person. Then another. The officer shouted. The door flew open. Footsteps. Shouts. Flashlights. One of the men tried to run toward the alley and slipped in the rain. The other went straight for the office, where I was standing frozen by the desk. He knew my name. That is the part that still lives in my body." He said it like he had known it for years. Jonas tackled him before he reached me. Later, the evidence would show the truth in pieces. A former employee, 2 accomplices, a long-running obsession built from restaurant schedules, social media checks, and stolen account access. They had used the clown as a moving sign, a marker of where they had been, where they intended to go, and who was already being watched. The toys in our homes had not arrived by magic. They arrived because someone had been inside, someone who understood keys, lock habits, deadbolts, the timing of night shifts, someone who knew how lonely people miss things. The toy itself was found in a duffel bag in the alley, along with several others, all with different scratches, all with names written under the tape inside the base. Some of the names belonged to employees from before I worked there. One did not survive the week after he vanished. They never gave me every detail. I think they knew I didn't need them. What I needed was to believe my fear had been accurate, that I had not imagined the pattern, that my body had been reading the room before my mind could. After the arrests, the restaurant shut down for 2 weeks. When we reopened, the clown was gone. Still, I checked the tables. Still, I locked my apartment door twice. Still, when a phone buzzes late at night, my chest tightens before I can think. I left that city 6 months later, not because I was running, because I needed to live somewhere my own nervous system no longer expected betrayal at every threshold. Sometimes I think about the smile on that toy, how each scratch changed it, how something once meant for a child became a signal for adults who had learned to survive by looking for danger in advance. I used to think privacy was a kind of luxury, a soft boundary, optional. Now I think it is closer to dignity. To be unobserved is not to be invisible. To be trusted is not to be owned. And to let someone in, whether through a door or a text or a smile that seems gentle enough to lower your guard, is always an act of risk. The worst part is not that the toy came back. It is that so many people noticed it first and still waited to see who would break. I still remember the rain on the windows that night, the hum of the fridge, the neon bleeding through wet glass. The way a harmless little face can become unbearable once you understand that someone used it to say what they could not say aloud. Do not let it in. Some warnings are not about monsters. Some are about people who have already learned how to become one without ever looking like it. Story 3. I was still learning how to be alone when they sent me downstairs. That was the first thing I remember clearly about that night. Not the rain, not the cold, not even the elevator groaning as it dropped beneath the restaurant into the basement level. I remember the loneliness first. It sat in me like a second pulse. I had moved across the city 3 weeks earlier after a breakup that had ended so quietly it felt almost cruel. No shouting, no dramatic exit, just a long, slow erosion of being wanted. My new apartment was above a laundromat on a street that never fully slept. There was always the sound of a distant bus, a siren 2 blocks away, a drunk laugh under a window. The silence inside my place felt artificial, like a room staged for someone else's life. The job was supposed to help. Late-night prep at a downtown kitchen. Small staff. Fast pace. No room to think too much. I liked that at first. The others did too, I thought. Especially Mira. She was the shift lead on paper, but she carried herself like she had been holding up the place for years. Calm voice. Tired eyes. Soft, precise movements. The kind of woman who noticed when you had not eaten and left a bowl of soup near your station without making a performance out of it. On my second night, she saw me standing too long in the dish pit, staring at nothing while water hammered the steel sink. "You're doing that thing," she said. "What thing?" "The one where you leave your body for a minute." I almost laughed. "I'm fine." She gave me a look that said she did not believe me, but she did not push. That was what made her comforting. Not the sympathy, the restraint. When the front of house closed and the music shifted lower, the restaurant changed. The overhead lights dimmed. The vent system hummed. Plates clinked in the back room. The smell of grease and bleach and onions settled into the air. Beyond the windows, rain turned the streetlights into long orange blurs. Cars passed with wet tires hissing on the asphalt. At 11:47 p.m., Mira came to me with a clipboard. "Basement run," she said. "Supplies. Gloves, black aprons, extra towels. Check the freezer inventory while you're down there." I nodded. She hesitated, then added, "If you see the extra door, don't open it unless I tell you to." I looked up. Extra door? Her face barely changed. That was the unsettling part. Not fear. Familiarity. "You'll know it when you see it." Then she walked away. The basement was colder than it should have been. Concrete walls. One flickering fluorescent tube. The smell down there was old and metallic, like a place that held secrets too long. I found the freezer at the back, a heavy industrial door with a hard rubber seal, and a handle that gave under my grip with a sigh. Inside were stacked crates of vegetables, labeled tubs of broth, trays wrapped in frost. And one more door. It was set into the far wall, not on the floor plan taped near the entrance, not mentioned by anyone. It was the same industrial gray as the freezer itself, but newer somehow. Cleaner, as if it had been installed after everything else and then made to look old. I stood there too long, listening. The freezer fan whined. Water dripped somewhere in the pipes overhead. My own breathing sounded too loud. Then I heard a voice. Faint, distorted, coming through the wall. 2 tickets to table 6, and fire the risotto. I froze. It was unmistakably a headset voice, a kitchen voice, calm, direct, male. But the kitchen was empty upstairs. We had closed the line 10 minutes earlier. I pressed my ear to the metal door. "Check the garnish fridge," the voice said. "No, the other one, behind the prep station." A pause. Then clearly, almost in my ear, "You're in the freezer now, aren't you?" My skin went cold in a way the basement never could have caused. I stumbled back so fast my shoulder hit the shelving. A crate of sealed stock rattled. My hand went into my pocket for my phone with stupid, automatic relief. No signal. 1 bar, then none. I told myself it had to be a recording, an old intercom system, some weird maintenance issue. Maybe I was overthinking. I finished the supply run in a hurry. My fingers were stiff when I came back upstairs. The kitchen was empty except for the hum of refrigeration and the low buzz of the hood vents. No one at the line. No one by prep. No footsteps. No voices. Yet the headset resting on the hook beside the pass crackled once, softly, like a throat clearing. Mira was at the dish station. She looked up at me. "Did you see it?" I stared at her, who was talking on the headset. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes tightened. "Did it speak to you?" "Yes." She closed her eyes for one beat. Then she said very quietly, "Okay, don't go back down alone." That should have been enough to make me leave. It wasn't. I needed the paycheck. I needed the room I had rented. I needed the illusion that I was rebuilding something, not drifting. And I needed to believe Mira, because believing her meant believing the world still had rules. After closing, when the others had gone home and the streets outside were black and slick with rain, she sat with me in the booth near the window and shared fries from the kitchen. "You've been here how long?" she asked. 3 weeks. "You talk like someone who's been trying not to be seen for a lot longer." I laughed once, because she said it gently. "I went through a breakup," I said. "That's all." She nodded as if that explained more than I wanted it to. "Sometimes," she said, "places notice people when they're already hurt." I almost asked what she meant. Instead, I watched a taxi pass outside, its red brake lights reflected in the glass. My own face was faintly visible over the street, blurred by the dark. Mira looked at the window too. Then she said, "Your ex used to call you Ellis when you were overwhelmed." I turned toward her so fast the coffee in front of me sloshed. "How do you know that?" She did not answer right away. "I saw it on a profile," she said finally. "What profile?" "Doesn't matter." "It does matter." She reached into her apron pocket and slid her phone across the table. The screen showed a fake account. My face. My name. One of my old photos. A bio written in a voice that sounded almost like mine, but too polished. Too patient. The account had been following restaurant staff. including people I had never met. The messages were subtle, friendly, curious. One of them to Mira read, "He gets shaky when he feels cornered. Be careful. He likes to pretend he's fine." My throat went dry. "I didn't send that," I said. "I know." She took the phone back and locked it. "Who did?" Mira looked past me toward the kitchen door. "That is what I've been trying to figure out." After that, I started noticing the edges of things. A voice note sent to my phone from an unknown number that sounded like my own breathing layered under another person's voice. A burner account that liked old posts on my private social media within seconds of me opening the app. A delivery receipt showing my address attached to a meal I had never ordered. A missed call at 1:17 a.m. every night for 3 nights in a row. The same minute, always the same, and always from a number that disappeared when I tried to call back. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe someone from the old apartment still had access to old data. Maybe the account was some stupid prank from a coworker. I wanted to believe it, but then I found the name tags. I had gone back into the basement for towels after midnight. Mira had asked me to wait, but the sink upstairs had burst, and everyone was distracted. The freezer was louder than before, the fan making a harsh mechanical whine that set my teeth on edge. I opened the extra door this time. It was not a freezer at all. It was a narrow room lined with shelves. Rows of unopened uniforms. White shirts folded in plastic. Black aprons still tagged. Hairnets. Gloves. Old name tags in a metal tray, stacked in neat alphabetical order. Some were scratched, some chipped, some faded with age. I picked one up. My name was there. Not mine exactly. My full name, printed on a badge style we had not used at this restaurant. Below it, a second line. Shift lead. My fingers went numb. On the shelf beneath it sat a working headset. The green light on the side pulsed once. Then a voice came through. "Don't touch the tags." I dropped the badge. The voice was calm. "Mail. Close. Too close. Not from the kitchen upstairs. Not from any speaker I could see." "Who is this?" I said, and hated how thin it sounded. A pause. Then, "You don't remember me yet." "That's understandable." I backed out of the room so hard my shoulder hit the frame. "Leah," the voice said. No one in this city had used that name in years. Not since my ex. Not since the one person who had ever called me that in the middle of the night when she wanted me to stop crying and stop apologizing. My pulse beat in my ears. "How do you know that name?" The headset crackled softly, as if someone smiled without warmth. "Because you were easier to track when you were hurting." I ran upstairs. The kitchen was empty. Completely empty. One pot simmered on the stove, but there was no one at the line. No one in prep. No one by the dish sink. The front of house lights were off. Chairs stacked. Music low in the dining room. Some soft jazz track left looping through the speakers. My own breathing felt too loud in the silence. Then the headset on the hook beside the pass clicked on by itself. A voice came through. "Table 12 needs a remake." I looked around the kitchen. No one. Then, from the doorway behind me, Mira said, "Don't answer it." I turned so fast I nearly fell. She was standing in the hall, pale and still, her phone in her hand. There was rainwater on her coat. She looked like she had come from outside, but I had no idea when she had left. "What is happening?" I whispered. Her face changed then. Not fear exactly. Decision. "You need to see something," she said. She took me to the office. Inside, she opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of printed emails, screenshots, timestamps. There were multiple fake profiles, several phone numbers, voice comparisons, metadata, photos taken from across the street at my apartment. One image of me coming home, coat damp, head down, the reflection of the laundromat sign blue in my window. I felt my stomach turn. "This is all me? It's all someone using you," she said. I stared at her. "Who?" She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the shift. "The last manager," she said. I frowned. "What?" "He didn't leave," she said. "Not really. He trained the system before he disappeared. Then he trained people. Then he trained someone else." The kitchen needs someone to answer when orders come through. No. Yes. She slid one last page across the desk. It was a staff rotation sheet. 7 years old. Names crossed out. New names written above them. Every line ended with the same note. Transfer complete. My hands trembled as I read it. This isn't a joke. No, she said. It's a chain. Whoever understands the room gets past the room. The freezer. The headset. The schedule. The names. I shook my head. That's insane. I know. Outside the office, a floorboard creaked. We both went still. The headset on the desk crackled once. Then the voice came again, clearer than before. Leah is not who you think she is. Myra's face did not move, but her hand tightened around the desk edge. Then I understood something and hated that I understood it. Mira, I said slowly, what is your real name? She closed her eyes. The rain hit the windows harder. When she finally spoke, it was nearly a whisper. I've been using this name since I was 22. That was not an answer. The headset crackled again. Tell him. Mira looked at the office door like she might be deciding whether to run. Then she said, the last manager cloned voices. He built fake accounts. He used empty shifts, late-night routes, and delivery logs to map people's routines. The freezer room was never storage. It was a listening post, a place to hide the uniforms of people who were removed before anyone noticed. My throat closed. Removed. Transferred, she said. Deleted from records. Replaced. The room felt too small. The voice on the headset. I said, who is it? She looked at me for a long second. Then she said, the one who trained me. A hard bang shook the office door. Then another. Not a fist. Not exactly. More like someone testing it from the other side. The speaker in the kitchen hissed with static. Mira grabbed my arm. You need to call the police now. My phone was already in my hand. The screen lit up with an incoming call from a number I recognized and had never given to anyone. My own. I answered without thinking. My voice came through the line. Soft. Familiar. Empty. You can still fix this, it said. I nearly dropped the phone. Then a second voice joined in. Low and calm and unmistakably human. Not mine. Open the freezer door, it said. We're running out of room. I did call the police then. Mira was already on the line, speaking too fast, giving addresses, describing the basement, the files, the fake profiles, the headset, the name tags. Her voice shook once, and then steadied. Outside, sirens began to rise through the rain. Not close at first. Then closer. Blue light bled through the office blinds. The person behind the office door had gone by the time the police got there. But they found enough. The extra freezer room, the uniforms, the headset system. A server tucked behind old shelving with mirrored recordings, voice files, inventory maps, burner phones, and years of archived employee identities. They found evidence of dozens of fabricated schedules and a map of movements across the restaurant and surrounding blocks. They found my photo. Myra's too. Others I had never met. Other names. Other lives folded into the same pattern. It was not haunted. It was curated. The man who had built it had used the restaurant as a machine for watching people long before either of us arrived. Mira had inherited the burden of keeping it hidden because she had been the one person left who understood how much damage the truth would do to everyone connected to it. And the headset, the voice on it had been coming from a remote loop. A live relay. Automated orders stitched to old human cues. The empty kitchen had been empty all night because nobody needed to be there anymore. The system had learned how to pretend. In the weeks after, the restaurant was shut down pending investigation. Phones were seized. Accounts were frozen. Police knocked on doors. People who had been missing from records came back into the light in fragments. Some remembered enough to be angry. Some remembered enough to be afraid. Mira disappeared before the formal interviews ended. Not physically, legally. She changed numbers, changed accounts, left behind the apron and the name and the version of herself that had survived the longest. I never blamed her for that. I went back to my apartment alone. The laundromat sign still lit the curtains blue at night. Rain still tapped the windows. The silence still arrived in pieces, then settled over everything. But something in me had shifted. I listened differently now, to the hum of appliances, to footsteps in the hall, to the tiny, ordinary noises that prove a place is occupied by human lives and not just watched by them. I deleted my social accounts. I replaced the phone. I checked every door twice. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I did not trust the feeling of being understood as quickly as I once had. That is what scares me now. Not the freezer, not the headset, not even the hidden room full of names. It is how easily a person can be made legible to the wrong hands. How comfort can be engineered. How a voice, repeated often enough, can sound like care. And how safety, once breached, never returns as innocence. Story 4. I moved here for the quiet. The apartment above the old theater smelled of damp wood and cold concrete. The pipes hummed like nervous whispers. Outside, the rain hit neon signs, so the streets looked like melted crayons. I liked it that way, liked the way the city blurred into color and sound. It made the silence inside tolerable. I was fresh from a breakup I hadn't properly mourned. Months of counseling, but still, I kept the blinds drawn, the kettle humming, the lights low. People said I was rebuilding. I told myself I was surviving. That's when the renovation started. I volunteered to help, part-time, unpaid, because I needed routine, because I needed to be around humans without being human myself. The theater had been empty for decades, its lobby yellowed with cigarette smoke and dust, its seats torn like old paper. The crew found it behind a plaster wall, sealed as if no one wanted it discovered. An old mascot head, a giant foam Ronald McDonald, face painted and frozen in a permanent, toothy grin. Imagine the kid who saw this at night, one of the carpenters joked. We all laughed. I laughed, but my throat felt dry. They set the mask aside, put it in the corner with other props, behind a velvet curtain nobody bothered to draw. I told myself it was nothing. A relic, just foam and paint. The first night I stayed late, I heard it. A soft shift behind the curtain, like fabric brushing against foam. I blinked. Nothing. I told myself I was imagining it. By the third week, the mask began to move. Not when anyone was watching, of course. But mannequins, set up for stage rehearsal, started appearing with it perched on their heads. One in the lobby, one in the old ticket booth, one leaning against a pillar as if waiting for an audience. Each morning, the mask was somewhere new. Always freshly placed. Always staring. Always grinning. I asked Liam, the lead carpenter, about it. It's the wind, maybe? He said, squinting at it. Or rats. This place is ancient. It moves on its own. I wanted to believe it. I told myself it made sense. Then came Elena. She was a volunteer costume designer. Quiet, patient. Smelled faintly of cedarwood and rain. She smiled like she had time for every secret I carried, but would never tell. You're still keeping the blinds down, she said one afternoon, while I was trying to fold torn theater curtains. You're hiding from something, aren't you? I shrugged. From everyone, mostly. Her hands brushed mine. Gentle. Accidental. I didn't flinch. You don't have to, she said. You can let someone in. I wanted to believe her. After that, I noticed things. Small things. Impossible things. She knew I liked my coffee bitter with oat milk before I ordered it. She knew the song that made me cry in the shower. She knew the street corner I always took when I walked home in the rain. She even mentioned my old nickname, one I hadn't used in years. I froze the first time she said it. How do you? She tilted her head. You told me. Once. I remember things. I told myself it made sense. Maybe I had whispered it. Maybe I had written it somewhere she read. But then the mask started doing more than appearing. One evening, I stayed late. My apartment smelled of wet coats and the kettle humming. The theater was empty except for me and the rain tapping against broken windows. I heard it first as a whisper of movement. Then the mask was on a mannequin in the corner of the stage, turned exactly toward me. I swear it had shifted while I wasn't looking. My phone buzzed. A notification from the theater's internal camera app. I opened it. Footage of the lobby. 11:42 p.m. The mask is not on a mannequin. It is moving. Walking. Someone inside it, in the shadows. Stiff. Mechanical. Perfectly upright. I called Elena. "Do you see this?" I whispered over the phone, my voice shaking. "I saw it," she said. "I've been trying to tell you. It's not just a mask. Something is wearing it. Watching." I froze. Watching. Yes. It knows when we're here. It knows the routines. I told myself it was impossible. I checked my apartment cameras. The blinds, always drawn, were slightly open. My phone's metadata showed it had been unlocked at night. I didn't touch it. I texted Liam and the crew. No one responded. Emails from the theater account were unread. From someone I hadn't met. Someone who knew exactly which key fob opened which door. Every night, the mask appeared further from where it should have been. Ticket booth. Lobby. Stage. Alley outside. I began sleeping with the curtains open, the rain splashing against the glass. My apartment felt too small, too exposed. Every hum of the refrigerator, every creak of the floorboards made me startle. Elena stayed close, protective, observant, attentive, and somehow, she always knew when I had started noticing the small, impossible details. "You're seeing it everywhere," she said one night after the rain had soaked the streets. "Neon reflections shivering across the wet asphalt. It's tracking you." "Why me?" She shrugged. "It knows you're alone, vulnerable. It's patient. It waits until it can learn everything." I told myself she was exaggerating. I told myself it was just the mask and my imagination. I wasn't sure anymore. I installed cameras inside the theater. Over the next week, I watched the feed obsessively. 11:15 p.m., mask on stage. 11:47 p.m., mask leaning in the ticket booth. 12:03 a.m., mask on the balcony, overlooking the seats, standing perfectly still. Then came the footage that broke me. 1:02 a.m., the side door opens. Someone enters. Tall, slim, moves like a shadow. They reach the costume head, lift it, and put it on. 1:03 a.m., the camera shifts outside. Rain. Neon streets. Empty. Then the figure is there, wearing the mask. Standing under the flickering marquee. Perfectly still. Watching. I watched for an hour. My own reflection in the monitor's black screen, blurred with rain on the window behind me. Elena held my hand, whispering, "We have to call someone." We went to the police. Showed them the footage. They came, took statements, checked the theater. Empty. Mask gone. No signs of forced entry. The cameras inside had been tampered with. Time stamps altered. One officer frowned at the recording. "This isn't just vandalism," he said. "This is surveillance. Someone's planning something." We stayed together that night in my apartment. Rain tapped against the window. The kettle hummed. The soft jazz from my neighbor's apartment floated through the walls. Every shadow felt too close. The next morning, Elena vanished. No call. No text. No trace. Only a lingering cedarwood scent in the hallway. I returned to the theater alone. The mask was on the stage, sitting on a chair, watching the entrance. I touched it. Foam. Paint. Hollow. And then my phone buzzed. Notification from the theater cameras. Outside, standing under the neon, something was wearing it. I ran. Down the street. Rain soaking my clothes. Reflection in puddles fractured into fragments of myself. The city felt too wide, too bright. Police came again, found footprints leading nowhere. Cameras corrupted. No sign of anyone but the mask. Weeks later, I received an email from an unknown account. Subject line, "Thank you for finding me." Attachment, a single frame from the last camera clip. The figure standing in the rain, perfectly still. Neon bleeding across the wet asphalt. And handwritten in the corner, "We learn who you are by waiting quietly. We take only what is offered." I deleted it. I told myself it was nothing. Sometimes, I think I see it in reflections in my apartment window, out of the corner of my eye on rainy streets, leaning in doorways or behind curtains. The worst part isn't the mask. It's the patience, the way it studies, waits, knows the routines, knows when you are alone, knows when your mind will wander, knows the details you tell no one. And if you are alone long enough, vulnerable enough, it can learn you. It can wear your face, your habits, your fear. And the only proof it ever leaves is the watching. I still walk past the theater sometimes. Neon reflections blur the windows. The rain hisses on asphalt. Sometimes, in a puddle, I catch the shape of a head too large, grinning, hollow eyes staring back. And I know it's learning, always learning. Trust is fragile. Privacy is fragile. Vulnerability is a doorway. And someone, or something, might already be inside your walls, waiting for you to notice, just so it can know who you are before you know yourself. Story 5. I arrived before sunrise, when the city still smelled of wet asphalt and neon reflections shimmered across rain-slicked streets. The cafe was empty, or so I thought. Every table gleamed, as if it had been scrubbed by someone who knew my habits better than I did. The espresso machine was humming before I even touched the switch. The receipt printer spit out a ticket, and then another, and another. All the orders were for customers who hadn't arrived yet. I pressed my palm against the cool metal counter, heart thudding. One ticket caught my eye. My name. Latte, 2 sugars, cinnamon sprinkle. Michelle. I blinked. The lights above the counter flickered, soft jazz drifting from the speakers. I told myself it was a mistake, maybe a prank, or a misprint. I wanted to believe it. I had moved here 6 months ago, fresh out of a divorce that left me hollow. My apartment smelled of cleaning products and loneliness. Nights were long, filled with the echo of memories I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. Rain tapped against the window like a quiet metronome, and I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the life I had lost, the person I used to be. The city was supposed to be my fresh start, the cafe my refuge. But something felt off the moment I stepped inside that morning. The first customer arrived at 7. A man in a gray trench coat, hair still damp from the rain. He ordered without looking at the menu, his eyes scanning the room like he had been here before. I remembered every order from the tickets. Every one matched, every detail perfect. I thought about calling my manager. I thought about calling the police. But I didn't. Instead, I noticed him. He smiled when I handed him his coffee, just a small curl of lips. And yet, something about the way he looked at me made my stomach knot. "I think you like your coffee sweet," he said, almost conversational. His voice wasn't threatening. It was warm, intimate, like someone who had been reading your diary. I guess, I said, uncertain. 2 sugars, cinnamon. Right. I froze. How could he know? His name was Adrian. That's what he told me after a few mornings. He arrived without fail, always with an umbrella, always observing. He asked about my day, my routines, my favorite pastries. I told myself I wasn't scared. I told myself it made sense. Lonely people seek connection. I was lonely. I wanted it to be normal. But the small details started to creep in. He knew the exact time I walked my dog, the songs I hummed while cleaning, the shows I watched on my night off. He mentioned things I hadn't told anyone, old nicknames, childhood streets, the name of my favorite cafe in my old city. I laughed it off. Maybe I was overthinking. Then the email started. At first, simple notes. Hope your day is going well. Enjoy the rain. No sender. No trace. Just the messages. They matched my schedule, my mood, my coffee order. Then the voice notes. My own voice clipped, saying things I thought only I had whispered into my phone. I began to notice the humming of appliances at home. My apartment was silent. The kettle whistled, the fridge buzzed, footsteps on the floorboards I knew were creaky, all when no one was there. My phone would buzz in the middle of the night, showing unknown numbers, burner emails, fake profiles. Screenshots of my movements, my posts, my locations. I told myself I wasn't imagining it. I told myself it made sense. But my pulse thrummed with dread. One evening, the cafe had emptied early. I lingered cleaning alone. Rain streaked the windows. Neon signs blurred into the fog. Adrian appeared behind me. "I know it's late," he said softly. I like to watch you work. There's something calming about your rhythm. My breath caught. Too intimate. Too invasive. It's late, I said, voice trembling. You shouldn't be here. I live nearby, he said. A shrug that didn't convince me. I just enjoy seeing you safe. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe it wasn't dangerous. The receipts began changing. Names I didn't recognize. Orders I hadn't seen. But then details too precise to ignore. Bagel with cream cheese, extra patience. Michelle. I noticed small changes in my apartment. A book on the nightstand moved. A jacket I never left out, folded neatly on a chair. My laptop opened to tabs I didn't visit. Photos of me, taken from outside. Locations tagged I hadn't shared. I tried rationalizing. Maybe someone broke in? Maybe it was a hack. Maybe I had left a door unlocked once. My brain searched for any logical explanation. Anything that would make sense. Adrian invited me for coffee outside the cafe one morning. His calmness was almost soothing. He laughed at my nervous jokes. He remembered my favorite pastries, my stories, my grief, my divorce. He listened like he had been my friend for years. I wanted to believe it. I did. But then he said casually, "You always pause at the corner of Maple Street before entering your building. I wonder why." I froze. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not even my closest friend. I began changing my routines, locking doors, taking different routes, deleting social media. Nothing stopped him. The messages followed. The orders. The voice notes. The precise knowledge. The glimpses outside my window. I realized the truth. It wasn't love. It wasn't friendship. It was control. Observation. Obsession. Adrian wasn't real. Not in the way I had thought. He was a construct, a carefully designed persona, a patchwork of data, attention, and manipulation. Fake profiles, burner phones, tracking apps, AI voice cloning. Every step, every detail, every intimate piece of me cataloged and mirrored back. I went to the police. They listened, some skeptical, some cautious. Screenshots, emails, metadata, timestamps. They followed the trail, traced IPs, traced devices. Adrian was many people, or maybe no person at all. Multiple victims scattered unnoticed, but all pieces of the same puzzle. When they finally caught him, or them, he, or they sat calmly, charming, manipulative, apologetic. A quiet smirk. "I just wanted to know you," was all he said. No remorse. No thrill. Just observation, repetition, obsession. I moved again. New city, new apartment, rain still tapping windows, floors creaking under my feet. I worked in a different cafe now, but every morning I checked the receipt printer, half expecting it to spit out my own name. I survived. I tell myself that, but I am not the same. Sometimes when I walk past a cafe at dawn, I feel the presence of someone who knows too much. And I remember, trust is fragile. Privacy is fragile. Obsession is quiet, insidious, and patient. And identity can be stolen in the time it takes to blink. I wonder how many of us live under invisible surveillance, waiting for orders printed for futures we cannot control. Waiting for the day our own lives are no longer entirely our own. And I think the line between care and control is thinner than we ever imagine. Story 6. I moved to this city carrying a silence in my chest. Divorce papers still warm in my bag, apartment half empty, walls echoing with memories I hadn't wanted. Nights were the hardest. Empty rooms, the hum of the fridge, the occasional siren rolling down wet streets. Rain tapped the windows like soft insistence. I took the night maintenance shift at a fast food chain because it paid, and because quiet work kept my mind from wandering too far. Most nights were predictable. Fryers buzzed, the soda machine hummed, fluorescent lights flickered. Safe routines. Until the place lights started. I first noticed it during a late-night check. The tunnel lights, those plastic tubes that twisted and coiled above the padded floors, blinked in sequences that seemed wrong. Patterns, not random, like a silent code. And then I heard it, knocking from inside the walls. Slow, deliberate, almost conversational. I told myself it made sense. Wiring, loose connections. maybe a raccoon. But the next night, the lights blinked again. Faster this time. The knocking matched each flash. And then laughter. Children laughing, high and clear, somewhere inside the tubes. I froze, hand on the ladder. My voice stuck in my throat. The place had been empty since closing. No staff, no kids, no cleaning crew. I climbed in. The plastic felt cold and clammy under my palms. The smell of damp vinyl filled my nostrils. I crouched, listening. The laughter echoed, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I called into the tube. "Hello." My voice sounded small, fragile. "Don't be scared," said a soft voice, calm and knowing. "I'm here." I spun around, expecting a child. Nothing. Just the cold shadows of the tunnel. I rationalized. Wiring hums can sound like voices. Maybe an old intercom, distorted through layers of plastic. I told myself it made sense. I wanted to believe it. Then she appeared. At first, just a presence in the staff room. A temp, maybe, or a parent helping out with a community program. But there was something warm, attentive. She smiled, and it was quiet but not empty. She asked about my apartment, my favorite coffee, the soft jazz station I listened to while cleaning. I was charmed. Vulnerable, I told her small details, recent breakup, nights alone, fear of being watched. She listened, really listened. "You're cautious," she said. "That's understandable." I wanted to believe her. I clung to that. But the place lights began to escalate. They blinked in patterns that mimicked routines I hadn't shared. My nightly ladder checks. The precise way I stacked the foam mats. Even sequences matching the timing of my shower. One night, my phone buzzed. A voice note. AI generated or perfectly cloned. My own voice, whispering things I hadn't said aloud. Metadata marked it as sent from a burner phone. Number blocked, new one appeared. I started noticing subtle invasions. Emails flagged as opened, even though I hadn't touched them. Social media posts tailored to me. Fake profiles commenting on things only a neighbor could know. The temp, she, knew my routines before I told her. Every favorite coffee, every habit, every soft song I hummed alone. I rationalized. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. She was careful, thoughtful. Maybe I overshared. The lights blinked faster. Knocks came in sync. A low buzzing hum. A faint scent, like crayons, old paper, and something metallic. The laughter. Clear, taunting. My reflection in the plexiglass tunnels. Watching me. Not a child. Something else. I became obsessed. Documenting every light sequence, recording the knocks, tracing phone metadata, trying to map the voices. Each night, the place became a spiral, blinking lights, echoes, shadows that didn't match the room. Then the first direct message arrived, on a dating app. Burner account, profile blank except for one sentence. "I saw your apartment last night. Rain on the windows. You hummed Autumn Leaves." I hadn't hummed that anywhere public. Not online. Not in text. Only my apartment alone. I felt my chest tighten. My apartment wasn't safe. My routines weren't private. My trust gone. She knew they started inserting themselves in every corner. Observing every online post, every email, every casual conversation. Knowledge of meals I made, songs I played, routines I'd thought invisible. Every detail. I tried to block, to erase, to flee. But each move was mirrored. Each precaution anticipated. They were patient, observant, quietly invasive. One night, I crawled into the tunnels again, flashlight trembling in my hand. The plastic walls reflected my fear. The lights blinked. Fast. Knocks came in perfect sync. And then laughter. Clear, joyful mocking. "Do you like it?" the voice asked, soft, calm, intimate. "Your world. Your routines. I know them better than you." I gagged on panic. "Who are you?" A silence. Then, "Someone who understands you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I was trapped inside the winding plastic maze, every turn echoing with impossibilities. By morning, the police came. Evidence finally enough. Burner phones, fake social profiles, AI-cloned audio files, metadata traces. They'd been orchestrating it for months. Patient, precise. The temp, the comforting presence, was a construction, a persona carefully designed to learn, manipulate, mirror. Multiple victims, a digital obsession grown into stalking art. I survived, but I wasn't the same. Even now, years later, I hear the faint hum of plastic tubes in my apartment. The way rain taps the windows reminds me of the knocks. My phone buzzes, and I flinch. I move again, walls thickened, routines obscured. But privacy? Trust? Those are fragile things, even in daylight. Sometimes I think about the place lights, the laughter that wasn't laughter, the calm voice that wasn't kind. They taught me a hard truth. Identity isn't entirely ours. Obsession is patient, and boundaries, however solid, can be traced, mirrored, manipulated. We carry memories. We carry routines. They are not just ours. They can be watched, echoed, stolen. And when the city sleeps and rain taps the glass in soft insistence, I whisper to myself, even the walls we build to protect us can be invaded. The most intimate spaces are never entirely private, and sometimes survival leaves its own invisible scars. Story 7. By the time I noticed the missing orders, I had already stopped sleeping properly. That was what the breakup did to me. It did not destroy me in one clean event. It hollowed me out. Slowly. My apartment became a place where sounds felt too loud and silence felt heavier than sound. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen like an exhausted animal. Rain tapped the bedroom window at night. My phone buzzed sometimes with dating app notifications I did not open. Some nights I would lie awake staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the building settle, thinking about how a person can leave your life and still occupy the same amount of space inside your chest. I took the late shift at a diner on the edge of town because I needed the money and because I thought motion might help. Cold city streets, wet neon, cars hissing through intersections. A place open all night, full of steam and grease and tired people who did not ask questions. I was the cashier. That is where it started. Not with blood, not with a scream, with complaints, wrong burgers, missing sides, fries instead of mashed potatoes, black coffee when the receipt said tea. A woman in a green coat insisting she had ordered pie with no cinnamon, even though the kitchen ticket clearly showed the modification. A truck driver swearing he had paid for a burger combo that never arrived. The strange thing was that every receipt matched the order perfectly. Every time. I checked them myself. The printer spat out the slips in a steady mechanical rhythm, paper curling warm in my hands. The black text was always neat and exact. No missing items, no substitutions, no mistakes. And yet the customers were never satisfied. They looked confused first, then angry, then embarrassed, like they were being told they had imagined their own hunger. Maybe the kitchen is screwing up, my manager said the first night. He was a thin man with a soft voice and tired eyes. He called me by my name in a way that made it sound like he was trying to reassure me. His name was Calvin. He had that kind of calm that makes you lean toward it. He seemed to understand when I got quiet. He noticed when my hands shook from too much coffee. He brought me a tea on rainy nights without asking. Once, when I was standing at the register staring blankly at the receipt printer, he said, "You look like you haven't been sleeping." I laughed too quickly. That obvious? He shrugged. "You keep rubbing your thumb over your ring finger." I froze. I had not worn a ring in 2 years. It was a small thing, probably nothing. Still, I felt the first thin thread of unease pull tight in my stomach. That night, after closing, I found a receipt on the floor behind the counter. No one had ordered food. No one had been at the register. It was folded into a narrow strip and damp around the edges, like it had been carried in from the rain. I opened it under the fluorescent lights. Table 6, soup, toast, no substitutions. Below that, in the same clean printer font, "Not for the living." I stared at it until the buzzing lights seemed to blur. Then I laughed once, because my mind wanted a way out of itself. I told myself it was a prank, a sick joke. Maybe one of the cooks was messing with me. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe I was overthinking. The next morning I asked the kitchen staff. No one admitted anything. One of the line cooks, a guy named Rafi, looked genuinely uneasy when I showed him the receipt. "That wasn't me," he said. "And I don't joke about stuff like that." He said it too quickly. Then he looked toward the back hallway, where the storage room door stood half open in the dim strip of kitchen light. I followed his gaze. The door was closed when I looked back. By the third night, the missing order complaints had become routine. Same pattern, same confusion, same correct receipts. A man in a gray jacket claimed his burger had no onions, though the slip said extra onions removed. A college girl said her noodles came with the wrong sauce. An elderly woman with wet hair and trembling hands insisted her sandwich was completely wrong. And then, when I offered to remake it, she stared at me with such exhausted fear that I nearly sat down beside her. The order was right, I said automatically, because that was what the ticket said. She shook her head. No, it was right for someone else. That line stayed with me. Right for someone else. After she left, I checked the table numbers from the tickets against the booth cameras. The footage showed each customer exactly as expected. The food came out. The customers took it. They argued anyway. Nothing obvious. Nothing impossible. Except when I paused one clip and zoomed in on a receipt in the woman's hand. The bottom of the slip had been smudged by grease. Underneath the printed item list, there was a second line. Too faint to notice at first. MS 04:13 AM. My initials. I jerked back from the screen so hard my chair scraped the floor. No one had placed that order in front of me. No one had spoken to me. Yet my own initials were there, hidden beneath the print like something buried and waiting. I took the receipt home. My apartment was silent except for the refrigerator and the rain. I laid the slip on the kitchen table under the yellow light and stared at it for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice note. I almost deleted it. Instead I pressed play. Static. Breath. Then a man's voice, low and careful, speaking as if he were standing close enough to be trusted. "You still checked the wrong drawer first," he said. I went cold. The note continued. "When you're anxious, you count the cups on the shelf. For blue, 2 white, 1 cracked handle in the back." I looked at the dish rack. For blue mugs, 2 white, 1 cracked handle in the back. My mouth went dry. The recording ended. I sat in the dark kitchen with my phone in my hand and listened to the building hum around me. Floorboards creaked somewhere above. A pipe clicked in the wall. My breathing sounded loud and strange, like it belonged to someone else. I wanted to believe it was a scam, a coincidence, a hacked contact list, something explainable. But the next day, Calvin was waiting for me before my shift. He handed me a coffee. "You look like hell." "Thanks." He smiled faintly, then lowered his voice. "Did you get the message?" I stared at him. "What message?" The smile faded. Not fear. Recognition, like he had expected that answer. He leaned one elbow on the counter and glanced toward the dining room, where only 2 customers sat under the buzz of the overhead lights. "You should be careful," he said quietly. "The wrong order gets passed along." "What does that mean?" His eyes lifted to mine. They were calm, tired, too calm. "You've never been the first person to notice," he said. Then he walked away. For the first time since I got hired, I paid attention to the regulars. That was when I saw it. Some people came in once, complained about the wrong order, and never returned. Others came in again and again, always ordering the same thing, always leaving with a strange, distracted look, like they had been told something private. And every missing order belonged to someone who had a name in town history. The local paper archive was full of them once I started looking. Teen boy vanished after a late-night shift at the marina. Woman from the flower market, never found after a winter storm. A mechanic who walked out of a bar and did not make it home. A waitress who left her car at the diner and disappeared before dawn. People who had not simply gone missing. People the town had stopped talking about. I spent one entire day on my break in the back booth with my laptop open, searching old news scans and social media pages. Rain streaked the front windows. The espresso machine hissed. Somewhere in the kitchen, a knife rattled against metal. I found a list of missing persons from the last 12 years. 11 of them had once been regular customers. 11 of them had ordered food from our diner. 11 of them had receipts in the system. All of them had food that never matched what actually reached the table. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Then I noticed something else. Every one of those names had been entered by the same cashier initials. MS. Mine. I shut the laptop and stood up too fast, knocking my knee into the table. When I turned, Calvin was standing behind me. I had not heard him approach. He looked at the laptop, then at me. "You found it." My throat tightened. "What is this?" He hesitated, and for one awful second I thought he might finally tell me I was insane. Instead he said, "There's a room under the floor." I waited for the joke. It never came. "There's always been a room under the floor," he said. "Not in the building plans, not on the city records, but it's there." The dining room noise seemed to dull around us. The hiss of the fryer, the clink of silverware, the soft jazz from the ceiling speaker. Everything felt far away. "Who's in it?" I whispered. He looked exhausted then. Not guilty, not shocked, just tired in a way that made him look older. "Some people who weren't meant to leave town," he said. I stared at him. He added, "And some who weren't meant to arrive." That night I checked the floor behind the counter. There was a section near the walk-in freezer where the tiles sounded different under my shoes. Hollow. I knelt there with my flashlight and listened to my own breathing. The hum of the freezer, the drip of something behind the wall. I found a seam in the tile, then a metal ring. I pulled. The hatch lifted with a wet, reluctant sound. Cold air rose from beneath the floor. Not mold, not rot. Something older. Something trapped. I nearly dropped the flashlight when I saw the steps. Concrete. Narrow. Leading down into blackness. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number again. This time it was a video. I opened it with shaking fingers. The camera was pointed at me. From inside the floor. I could see myself standing above the hatch, pale and stunned, framed by the yellow light of the kitchen. Behind me, Calvin was visible in the reflection of the stainless steel prep table. He was speaking to someone off camera. Then the image shifted. A face appeared in the dark behind the camera. Not a monster. A man. Thin. Middle-aged. Familiar in the way some nightmares are familiar. He smiled at the lens and said, in a voice almost gentle, "The order is correct. You just keep sending it to the wrong table." I dropped the phone. When the police arrived, it took them less than an hour to break through the hidden space under the diner. What they found made the town look smaller. There was a narrow room under the floor lined with old banquettes, broken chairs, and stacks of archived receipts. Boxes of personal effects, wallets, bracelets, a set of keys with a hotel tag, a cracked phone with no battery, scratched plates, serving trays, and on the far wall, pinned in neat rows, were printed orders going back years, each one marked with a name, each one linked to a missing person. The man in the video was not some supernatural force. He was a former owner's son, a local who had stayed after the diner changed hands. He had built a system beneath the restaurant, used the confusion of late-night service, the gaps in memory, the routine of shift work. Fake orders, mismatched tickets, misrouted meals, small disappearances hidden inside ordinary noise. He had been using the diner as a machine for erasure. Calvin knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough. Enough to stay. Enough to help. Enough to keep the whole thing quiet, because people in town had done what people do when something terrible becomes part of the local rhythm. They learned to step around it. There were victims still alive when they were found. Not many. One of them had been below the floor for 8 years. The aftermath was all lights and questions and tape over the doors. Reporters outside in the rain. Flashbulbs. Police in wet jackets. My name in a statement I barely remembered giving. Calvin was arrested. So was the man from the video. More charges followed. The town began correcting itself in public, which is another way of saying it started pretending it had never known. I left the diner 3 days later. I did not take my apron. I did not take the leftover tips from the drawer. I took only my coat and the receipt with my initials on it. The final slip had been found beneath the floorboards, tucked into a plastic sleeve with the others. Someone had written on the back in the same neat printer font, "Table for one, under the floor, no substitutions." I keep thinking about that phrase. Not because it was dramatic, because it was precise. The worst lies are not the loud ones. They're the organized ones. The lies that come with timestamps and receipts. The lies that look like routine until you understand they were designed to make absence feel normal. Sometimes I still dream of the restaurant after closing. The hum of the fridge, the neon light on wet pavement, the sound of a ticket printer spitting out a perfect order. And I understand now that the terrifying part was never the missing food. It was the way everyone in town had learned to accept the wrongness as long as it arrived neatly itemized. Because privacy can be stolen, identity can be misrouted, and if enough people agree to call a disappearance ordinary, then even truth can be served cold under fluorescent light, with the receipt folded neatly on top. Story 8. The rain had started again, a fine, steady drizzle that turned the city streets into black mirrors streaked with neon. I walked past cafes shuttered for the night, the faint smell of coffee and pastry lingering in the air, my coat pulled tight around me. My apartment above the laundromat felt empty when I returned, the fridge humming in the silence, pipes clicking in a rhythm that sounded too human. I was new here, new at this store, and I was still learning how to be alone. I had moved across town to escape him, to escape the apartment, the memories, the suffocating quiet of a relationship that had drained me of certainty. Now, the quiet followed me anyway. I thought work would be different, that I could rebuild myself in fluorescent light between cash registers and inventory counts. The manager's office was a curiosity from my first day. Locked every night, the frosted glass obscured everything inside, but the light was never off. Always a dull amber glow, as if the office had its own heartbeat. Sometimes the glow flickered, too deliberately, almost like a signal. Everyone joked about it quietly, but I noticed. One evening, Mira, new like me, though she seemed older in a way I couldn't define, waited for me by the back door. Calm, precise, with a voice that made tension feel like it had been anticipated. "You've noticed the office light," she said. Not accusatory, observant, comforting in a way I needed. "I see it every night," I admitted. "Even after the store closes. Always on." She nodded. "It watches us. Or maybe we watch it." Her laugh was soft, almost fragile. "Depends on how you look at it." I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe I was. Maybe it was just the new job, the lonely nights, the post-breakup exhaustion. I wanted to believe her tone meant safety. A week later, curiosity won. I stayed after closing. My footsteps echoed across linoleum, the distant hum of refrigerators punctuated by a floor creak behind me. The office door was still locked. The light burned through the frosted glass like it had its own pulse. I pressed my hand against the cold doorknob. Locked. Then I heard it, a soft scraping from inside. Not loud, not deliberate, but present. My heartbeat doubled. I told myself it was Mira tidying up after a late shift. Logical, reasonable, safe. "Who's there?" I called. My voice sounded wrong, too loud in the empty store. Nothing. I circled the office, peering through the frosted glass. Shapes shifted, shadows that shouldn't have been there. The scraping again, then a soft click, a chair moving. Alone. I told myself it made sense. Maybe the manager had stayed late. Maybe it was a delivery. Maybe I was imagining patterns where none existed. The next night, Mira stayed with me after closing. "Don't go into the office," she said, voice soft but firm. "I've seen what's inside." I asked her what she meant. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the glass. Then she said, "It's not just the manager. It's histories. People who worked here. People who disappeared from the schedule. You'll see if you go in." I told myself she was exaggerating, that she wanted to scare me, that she was protecting me. But curiosity is a stubborn thing, and on the third night, I found myself back at the office. The lock gave way easier than it should have. I had brought a small crowbar from the supply closet. A precaution. Inside, the office smelled of paper and something older. Dust motes floated in the light from a single overhead bulb. The door clicked shut behind me. The chair was in the center of the room, facing the wall. Empty. Stacks of photographs leaned against the filing cabinet. Old employee photos. Hundreds. Each face scratched out. Except one. Mine. My pulse stuttered. I stepped closer. The scratches were deliberate, not random. The pencil or pen that had done this left a jagged texture over every other face. But mine was untouched. Clear. Perfect. I heard footsteps behind me. My own breath sharp in my ears. A drawer creaked. Papers shifted. Ellis. I spun. Mira stood in the doorway, her coat damp from rain, her phone in her hand. She looked as exhausted as she did comforting. "You shouldn't have opened this," she said. I had to know," I whispered. Her eyes were steady, piercing. "Do you know how many people saw the office light and never went in? How many got curious enough to step inside, only to vanish from the schedule?" "What are you saying?" Mira hesitated. Then she stepped closer. "The manager doesn't work here alone. Or at least, he didn't. Someone has been recording everything for years. Footage, schedules, private routines. Old voice notes, metadata from phones, timestamps from the POS. Whoever sits in that office controls the observation of everyone else." My stomach turned. "Then why me?" "Because you noticed the light," she said. "Because you ask questions. Because you're alone enough to be watched carefully." I told myself she was exaggerating. That it had to be a sick joke, a prank, a setup. But then I saw the headset on the manager's desk. One small, glowing green light. Pulsing. On. I heard a voice. Soft. Calm. Observing. "Ellis, don't touch the photos." My breath caught. The kitchen was empty upstairs. All night. Who is that?" I stammered. Myra's eyes were sharp now. Not protective. Warning. "He's been here longer than the manager. Before anyone. He built the system. People disappear quietly. Accounts vanish. Records are adjusted. Photos scratched. He keeps the pattern going." I looked at the photos again. Hundreds of faces. Scratched. Erased. Except mine. A voice note pinged on my phone. Unknown number. I opened it. My own voice speaking, saying things I had never said aloud. Words from a journal I had deleted weeks ago, whispered into the darkness of my apartment. I dropped the phone. My hands shook. Mira grabbed it. "He's listening. Tracking. Learning. You've been part of it already, whether you knew it or not." I wanted to believe she was exaggerating. Maybe I'm just seeing connections that aren't real. "Maybe," she said softly. "But sometimes seeing the connections is what keeps you alive." The office door behind me clicked. Not from anyone's hand. Just clicked. Locked again. I spun. Mira was gone. Footsteps echoed behind me in the hall. Not hers. Not anyone I knew. The headset clicked again. Orders. Names. Instructions. The kitchen upstairs still empty. I ran. Down the stairwell, the wet linoleum reflecting the fluorescent exit signs like distorted mirrors. My heart pounded. Each step echoed too loudly. I heard breathing behind me. Slow. Calculated. Measuring. I reached the street. Rain soaked through my coat. Neon signs blurred in puddles. I kept running. My apartment never felt smaller than it did that night, but it was quiet when I returned. Too quiet. The fridge hummed. The pipes clicked. I checked my phone. No signal. Nothing. Over the next week, I noticed small things. The light in the manager's office flickered in impossible patterns. Voice notes arrived from burner numbers referencing my routines, my favorite coffee, the song I listened to when I cooked alone. Emails appeared in my inbox that I had never sent, phrased like they had been observing me for months. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself Mira had been exaggerating. I told myself it made sense. Until I saw the photos again. The set had grown. My face remained intact, isolated among hundreds of scratched faces. And one night, I saw a shadow move across the wall behind the glass. Alone, watching. The police came after the office was reported abandoned. The building emptied overnight. Mira was gone. The manager vanished. Evidence was seized: old cameras, voice recorders, computers with deleted logs and reconstituted metadata. But the person behind it, the one orchestrating the observation, was never caught. I survived, but the office light never left me. I see it in reflections now, in cafe windows, in elevator glass, in the darkened street puddles. I hear it in faint hums, in floor creaks, in distant voice notes that might not exist. I learned too late that being seen can be a weapon, that trust can be engineered, that someone can know your routines, your habits, your loneliness, and use it against you quietly. I sit alone in my apartment now, listening to the pipes, the fridge, the rain. Sometimes I think I'm being careful. Sometimes I think I'm imagining patterns. But the photographs, scratched faces, and that one untouched image in the manager's office, the one with me staring back, remind me, someone will always watch, and some things, once observed, can never be unseen. And safety, I've realized, is just the absence of immediate observation. Story 9. The first time I heard the second sound, I was standing alone behind the lobby counter at 1:13 in the morning, staring at the ice machine like it had done something personal to me. The hotel was half asleep. The front doors were locked. Rain tapped the windows in a soft, steady pattern that made the whole building feel submerged. Outside, the streetlight smeared into the wet glass in a pale orange blur. Inside, the air smelled like old carpet, lemon cleaner, and the metallic cold of the machine humming in the hall. I had only been there 3 weeks. I had moved to this city after the breakup because I could not stand the apartment anymore. The silence had become too intelligent. It knew my name. It knew the shape of my grief. My ex had not been loud when he was cruel. That was the worst of it. He had taught me how to doubt my own reactions without ever raising his voice. So when I took the overnight shift at the hotel, I told myself I was starting over. The ice machine sat just off the lobby corridor, past the elevator and the vending machine that never worked properly. It rattled and clanked in the dark like a tired appliance. Normal, mechanical, comfortingly dull. Then, under the clatter, I heard something else. A second sound. Soft, thin, almost speech. I stepped closer and looked through the small slot where the ice came out. The machine was shaking a little, dropping cubes into the bin with a wet, brittle hiss. And beneath that, I heard my name. Not clearly, not enough to understand the sentence, just enough to make my skin tighten. I stood there listening. The machine rattled again. The whisper came again. I told myself it was the pipes, the vents, some trick of the building settling in the rain. Maybe the air conditioning was pulling sound through the walls. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was still the kind of person who expected danger to announce itself in a clean, obvious way. I wanted to believe it was nothing. The next night, the ice came out warm. I know how that sounds. I know how impossible it sounds. But I remember it because I touched it before I realized it was wrong. I was making a soda for a guest who had asked for ice on the side, and when I dropped the cubes into the cup, they were not cold against my fingers. They were warm, not hot, not even noticeably warm at first, just wrong enough to make me pause. I held one up in the lobby light. It was cloudy and half melted at the edges, but inside it was not just trapped bubbles and frost. There was something else frozen in it, a tiny shape, pink and curved, like a fingerprint. I stared at it until my pulse started thudding in my ears. When it melted in my hand, I saw the ridges more clearly. A fingertip, small, childlike, pressed into the center of the cube from the inside. I dropped it into the sink so fast the metal clanged. My manager, Denise, found me standing there with my hands wet and shaking. "You okay?" she asked. Denise was the kind of woman who wore calm like armor. She had sharp cheekbones, a neat bun, and a voice that never rose unless there was a fire alarm. She noticed everything, or I thought she did. I showed her the ice. She looked at it once and frowned. "Probably a bad freeze cycle," she said. These machines jam all the time. Did you see the... It's probably mineral buildup. The way she cut me off made me feel embarrassed, like I had already become the kind of person who mistakes ordinary things for threats. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just raw from the breakup, from the move, from nights spent alone with the humming refrigerator in my studio apartment and the city sirens fading somewhere far away. Denise touched my shoulder once, quick and practical. "You're new. Everything feels weird when you're new." That should have helped. It did help for a while. Then the whispers got clearer. They came from the drain under the ice machine, a low murmur that moved up through the metal grid when the lobby was empty. At first I thought it was the plumbing carrying voices from somewhere else in the building. But the words began to change. "Lena. Lena, look. Lena here." I had never told anyone at work that name was not my first one. It had been years since anyone used it. I went cold every time I heard it. I said nothing at first. I kept checking the machine, opening the panel, peering inside with a flashlight while the neon sign from the liquor store across the street washed the lobby in blue and red reflections. I looked for wires, speakers, a hidden device. I found nothing except frost, water, and the ordinary damp smell of machinery. Then one night, I found my phone on the counter with a voice note already open. I had not touched it. The audio was 3 seconds long. A breath, then my own voice, soft and strained, saying, "Don't leave me alone with him." I stopped breathing. I replayed it. It was me, or something almost close enough to me that my stomach dropped anyway. My phone buzzed again before I could think. A text from an unknown number. "You still say that in your sleep." I did not sleep that night. I sat behind the front desk with the lights too bright and the rain drumming harder against the glass, my coffee gone cold beside me. Every few minutes the ice machine would clatter in the hall, and under it, that second sound would move like a whisper traveling through a wall. By morning I had convinced myself someone was messing with me. A co-worker prank, a guest with too much time, a camera hidden somewhere in the lobby, a bad joke that had gone farther than it should have. Then a new person started coming by after midnight. His name was Jonah. He said he was a maintenance contractor brought in to inspect the HVAC system on the upper floors. He had a gentle face, tired eyes, and the kind of voice that made you lower your shoulders without meaning to. He noticed I was tense before I said anything. "You don't look like you've had a full night in weeks," he said, leaning against the counter with a cup of black coffee. "You been sleeping at all?" "Enough," I said. He nodded like he heard the lie and did not mind it. "I used to work nights too," he said. "You get used to the building sounds. At least, most of them." Something in my expression must have changed, because he looked toward the hallway and then back at me. "The ice machine," he said softly. "You hear it too." I stared at him. He lowered his voice. "You're not imagining it." That was the first time someone had said exactly the thing I was afraid to say out loud. He stayed near me after that, never crowding, never pushing. He seemed to know when I needed coffee and when I needed silence. He left a paper bag of lemon candies on the counter once, saying, "For the aftertaste when you've been up too long." I asked how he knew I liked lemon. He gave a small smile. "You buy the lemon tea from the corner cafe, the one with the cracked window. You ask for extra honey." I felt my face tighten. "You've been watching me?" His eyes held mine, calm, unoffended. "No, I'm observant." I wanted to believe him. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe he was just another lonely person who knew the habits of other lonely people. But then he mentioned the old name. Not Lena. The one before that. The one nobody used anymore because it belonged to a version of me I had buried so deep even I tried not to think about her. I set the coffee down slowly. "How do you know that?" I asked. Jonah did not answer right away. The ice machine clattered in the hall. Under it, the whisper started again. Low, almost affectionate. "Because," he said, "you leave traces." I should have walked away then. Instead, I did what I always did when something felt wrong. I tried to make it make sense. I told myself he must have found me online. Maybe through social media. Maybe through old tagged photos. Maybe through the kind of digital trail everyone leaves without thinking. It was embarrassing but plausible. Then the hotel email system started showing strange things. Guest requests with my name in the subject line. Calendar entries I had not added. A note in my work account that said, "She checked the machine again at 2:11 a.m. I showed Denise. She frowned, clicked through the log, and went still. "Someone's in the admin settings," she said. "Who?" She looked up at me, then away. "I don't know." By then I had started noticing the cameras. Not the obvious ones. Those I knew about. I mean the little details. The lobby angle changing slightly overnight. The timestamp on the elevator feed running ahead by 8 minutes. The front desk login showing a second device. An unknown phone connected to the Wi-Fi under a string of randomized numbers. Someone was inside the system. Someone was also inside the building. On the third night, I opened the ice bin and found the cubes arranged in a shape that made no sense. Not a symbol. Not exactly. 3 rows. 1 cube missing. Like a mouth with a tooth pulled out. And in the center, pressed into the frost, were 5 tiny fingerprints. Fresh. Perfect. Frozen into the surface, as if the ice had formed around a hand that was still there. I backed away so quickly I hit the wall behind me. The drain below the machine gurgled. Then very clearly, in a voice no louder than a breath, someone said, "Lena." I dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the vending machine, sending a cone of light across the floor. For 1 second, in that pale strip, I saw a shadow standing in the hallway. Not a person exactly, just the outline of one, motionless. When I lunged for the front desk phone, the shadow was gone. I called police that night. They came, checked the machine, checked the hallway, checked the service corridor. Nothing. No hidden speaker. No person in the vents. No sign of forced entry. One officer looked bored. Another looked apologetic. "Could be echo from the plumbing," he said. I almost laughed. I think I might have been near tears. Then Denise pulled me aside. "You need to stop provoking this," she whispered. I stared at her. "Provoking what?" She glanced toward the hallway. "Whoever is doing it." That was the first time I realized she was afraid. Not of the machine. Of someone. The next morning, I found a folder in my email drafts that I did not remember creating. Inside were screenshots. My apartment building. My bus route. My grocery store. The cafe where I sat every Sunday morning pretending I was reading while I watched the rain. There was even a picture of the street outside my old therapist's office. The captions were in a voice I recognized with a sick feeling in my stomach. Mine, or someone almost matching it. The text said, "She still keeps the curtains open after dark. She still flinches when men stand behind her in line. She still thinks the quiet means she is alone." I called the number attached to the draft. A man answered on the first ring. "Hello, Lena," he said. I knew his voice. Not because I had met him in real life. Because I had heard him in voice notes. In the audio files. In the whisper under the ice machine. "Jonah." He sounded patient. Almost kind. "I didn't want you to find it like this," he said. My skin went cold. "What are you doing?" "Helping," he said. Something in the background clicked. A lighter. Maybe a door. Maybe a lock. "You're very easy to watch," he said. "People think privacy is a wall. It isn't. It's just a rhythm. Once you learn it, you can step in between." I could hear my own breathing getting sharper. "You're in the hotel." A small pause. "Sometimes." I slammed the phone down and ran. Not toward the lobby. Toward the security office. The door was unlocked. Inside, the monitor wall was on. Every camera in the building was live. The hallway feed showed the ice machine corridor. Empty. Then the image glitched. Jonah appeared in the frame. He was standing right in front of the machine, face half hidden by shadow, one hand resting on the metal panel like he knew exactly where to wait. He looked straight into the camera. Then he smiled. Not broadly, not crazily, just enough to make my stomach drop. The feed switched. The lobby camera. He was behind the front desk now, next to the coffee maker, staring at the lens with the same calm expression. Then the picture cut again. The elevator camera. He was inside, holding something black in his hand. A burner phone. I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Measured. I turned. Denise stood in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Don't move," she said. For one terrible second, I thought she was warning me. Then I saw the badge in her hand. Not a hotel badge. Police. She had been wearing it under her blazer. The truth unfolded in pieces after that, each one worse than the last. Jonah was not a contractor. He had been using fake credentials to enter the building for months. He had worked the maintenance rotation at 3 other properties under different names. He monitored people through hotel systems, stolen Wi-Fi access, cloned key cards, and hidden devices. The whispers had not been supernatural. They came from a mic channel routed through the drain housing, a crude setup meant to catch sound and feed it back through a speaker hidden in the utility wall. The warm ice cubes? He had been cycling the machine with a heating fault, then freezing contaminated water in short bursts to leave traces. The fingerprints were from latex molds, tiny replicas pressed into the water tray before freezing. He wanted us to notice. He wanted the fear to spread slowly. Denise had suspected something for weeks. She had been working with a detective after a guest reported a woman following them into the elevator at 2 a.m. The woman had been fake. Another identity. Another mask. Jonah had been collecting patterns. Routines. Responses. He targeted people after breakups, relocations, divorce filings, recent trauma. People who were already tired enough to doubt themselves. People like me. The arrest happened in the service stairwell after he tried to leave through the loading bay. There was shouting, flashing lights, rain on the pavement outside. I did not see much of it clearly, only the shape of him going rigid when officers pinned him to the wall. Only the look on his face when they pulled the burner phones from his coat. Not anger, not panic, disappointment. That was what stayed with me, like I had failed him somehow. Afterward, the hotel was closed for inspection. The lobby lights were turned off. The ice machine was removed and hauled away in silence. The hallway felt too empty without it, too quiet. I expected to miss the noise, but I did not. I missed only the version of myself who had still believed the world was simple enough to explain. Police found thousands of files, voice recordings, fake profiles, photographs, messages sent to previous victims under old usernames and reused voices. He had been doing it for years, building people out of fragments, breaking them with intimacy. I moved out of the apartment a week later. I could not sleep there anymore. The silence had changed shape. Every vent sounded like a whisper. Every appliance seemed to remember him. Sometimes I still wake at night certain I hear the clatter of ice in a hallway that no longer exists. I no longer trust easy kindness. Not completely. Not at first. I no longer assume that what feels personal is safe. And I understand now that obsession does not always arrive as violence. Sometimes it arrives as attention, as recognition, as the illusion of being seen. The most dangerous people are not always the loud ones. Some of them speak softly. Some of them memorize your habits. Some of them learn the sound of your breathing through a drain and call it love. What happened to me did not end when the police closed the case. It changed the way I listen, the way I stand near doors, the way I notice reflections in windows, the way I check the dark before I speak my own name. Because privacy is not just about hiding. It is about having a self that cannot be easily entered. And once someone learns how to whisper your name from inside the walls, you never again feel entirely alone in a room that is supposed to be yours. Story 9. The first time I heard the second sound, I was standing alone behind the lobby counter at 1:13 in the morning, staring at the ice machine like it had done something personal to me. The hotel was half asleep. The front doors were locked. Rain tapped the windows in a soft, steady pattern that made the whole building feel submerged. Outside, the streetlight smeared into the wet glass in a pale orange blur. Inside, the air smelled like old carpet, lemon cleaner, and the metallic cold of the machine humming in the hall. I had only been there 3 weeks. I had moved to this city after the breakup because I could not stand the apartment anymore. The silence had become too intelligent. It knew my name. It knew the shape of my grief. My ex had not been loud when he was cruel. That was the worst of it. He had taught me how to doubt my own reactions without ever raising his voice. So when I took the overnight shift at the hotel, I told myself I was starting over. The ice machine sat just off the lobby corridor, past the elevator and the vending machine that never worked properly. It rattled and clanked in the dark like a tired appliance. Normal, mechanical, comfortingly dull. Then, under the clatter, I heard something else. A second sound. Soft, thin, almost speech. I stepped closer and looked through the small slot where the ice came out. The machine was shaking a little, dropping cubes into the bin with a wet, brittle hiss. And beneath that, I heard my name. Not clearly, not enough to understand the sentence, just enough to make my skin tighten. I stood there listening. The machine rattled again. The whisper came again. I told myself it was the pipes, the vents, some trick of the building settling in the rain. Maybe the air conditioning was pulling sound through the walls. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was still the kind of person who expected danger to announce itself in a clean, obvious way. I wanted to believe it was nothing. The next night, the ice came out warm. I know how that sounds. I know how impossible it sounds. But I remember it because I touched it before I realized it was wrong. I was making a soda for a guest who had asked for ice on the side, and when I dropped the cubes into the cup, they were not cold against my fingers. They were warm. Not hot. Not even noticeably warm at first. Just wrong enough to make me pause. I held one up in the lobby light. It was cloudy and half melted at the edges, but inside it was not just trapped bubbles and frost. There was something else frozen in it, a tiny shape, pink and curved, like a fingerprint. I stared at it until my pulse started thudding in my ears. When it melted in my hand, I saw the ridges more clearly. A fingertip, small, childlike, pressed into the center of the cube from the inside. I dropped it into the sink so fast the metal clanged. My manager, Denise, found me standing there with my hands wet and shaking. "You okay?" she asked. Denise was the kind of woman who wore calm like armor. She had sharp cheekbones, a neat bun, and a voice that never rose unless there was a fire alarm. She noticed everything, or I thought she did. I showed her the ice. She looked at it once and frowned. "Probably a bad freeze cycle," she said. "These machines jam all the time. Did you see It's probably mineral buildup." The way she cut me off made me feel embarrassed, like I had already become the kind of person who mistakes ordinary things for threats. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just raw from the breakup, from the move, from nights spent alone with the humming refrigerator in my studio apartment and the city sirens fading somewhere far away. Denise touched my shoulder once, quick and practical. "You're new. Everything feels weird when you're new." That should have helped. It did help for a while. Then the whispers got clearer. They came from the drain under the ice machine, a low murmur that moved up through the metal grid when the lobby was empty. At first I thought it was the plumbing carrying voices from somewhere else in the building. But the words began to change. "Lena. Lena, look. Lena here." I had never told anyone at work that name was not my first one. It had been years since anyone used it. I went cold every time I heard it. I said nothing at first. I kept checking the machine, opening the panel, peering inside with a flashlight while the neon sign from the liquor store across the street washed the lobby in blue and red reflections. I looked for wires, speakers, a hidden device. I found nothing except frost, water, and the ordinary damp smell of machinery. Then one night I found my phone on the counter with a voice note already open. I had not touched it. The audio was 3 seconds long. A breath, then my own voice, soft and strained, saying, "Don't leave me alone with him." I stopped breathing. I replayed it. It was me, or something almost close enough to me that my stomach dropped anyway. My phone buzzed again before I could think. A text from an unknown number. "You still say that in your sleep." I did not sleep that night. I sat behind the front desk with the lights too bright and the rain drumming harder against the glass, my coffee gone cold beside me. Every few minutes the ice machine would clatter in the hall, and under it, that second sound would move like a whisper traveling through a wall. By morning I had convinced myself someone was messing with me. A co-worker prank, a guest with too much time, a camera hidden somewhere in the lobby, a bad joke that had gone farther than it should have. Then a new person started coming by after midnight. His name was Jonah. He said he was a maintenance contractor brought in to inspect the HVAC system on the upper floors. He had a gentle face, tired eyes, and the kind of voice that made you lower your shoulders without meaning to. He noticed I was tense before I said anything. "You don't look like you've had a full night in weeks," he said, leaning against the counter with a cup of black coffee. "You been sleeping at all?" "Enough," I said. He nodded like he heard the lie and did not mind it. "I used to work nights too," he said. "You get used to the building sounds. At least, most of them." Something in my expression must have changed, because he looked toward the hallway and then back at me. "The ice machine," he said softly. "You hear it too?" I stared at him. He lowered his voice. "You're not imagining it." That was the first time someone had said exactly the thing I was afraid to say out loud. He stayed near me after that, never crowding, never pushing. He seemed to know when I needed coffee and when I needed silence. He left a paper bag of lemon candies on the counter once, saying, "For the aftertaste when you've been up too long." I asked how he knew I liked lemon. He gave a small smile. "You buy the lemon tea from the corner cafe, the one with the cracked window. You ask for extra honey." I felt my face tighten. "You've been watching me?" His eyes held mine, calm, unoffended. "No, I'm observant." I wanted to believe him. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe he was just another lonely person who knew the habits of other lonely people. But then he mentioned the old name. Not Lena. The one before that. The one nobody used anymore because it belonged to a version of me I had buried so deep even I tried not to think about her. I set the coffee down slowly. "How do you know that?" I asked. Jonah did not answer right away. The ice machine clattered in the hall. Under it, the whisper started again. Low, almost affectionate. "Because," he said, "you leave traces." I should have walked away then. Instead, I did what I always did when something felt wrong. I tried to make it make sense. I told myself he must have found me online. Maybe through social media. Maybe through old tagged photos. Maybe through the kind of digital trail everyone leaves without thinking. It was embarrassing, but plausible. Then the hotel email system started showing strange things. Guest requests with my name in the subject line. Calendar entries I had not added. A note in my work account that said, "She checked the machine again at 2:11 a.m. I showed Denise. She frowned, clicked through the log, and went still. "Someone's in the admin settings," she said. "Who?" She looked up at me, then away. "I don't know." By then I had started noticing the cameras. Not the obvious ones. Those I knew about. I mean the little details. The lobby angle changing slightly overnight. The timestamp on the elevator feed running ahead by 8 minutes. The front desk login showing a second device. An unknown phone connected to the Wi-Fi under a string of randomized numbers. Someone was inside the system. Someone was also inside the building. On the third night, I opened the ice bin and found the cubes arranged in a shape that made no sense. Not a symbol. Not exactly. 3 rows. 1 cube missing. Like a mouth with a tooth pulled out. And in the center, pressed into the frost, were 5 tiny fingerprints. Fresh. Perfect. Frozen into the surface, as if the ice had formed around a hand that was still there. I backed away so quickly I hit the wall behind me. The drain below the machine gurgled. Then, very clearly, in a voice no louder than a breath, someone said, "Lena." I dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the vending machine, sending a cone of light across the floor. For 1 second, in that pale strip, I saw a shadow standing in the hallway. Not a person exactly, just the outline of one, motionless. When I lunged for the front desk phone, the shadow was gone. I called police that night. They came, checked the machine, checked the hallway, checked the service corridor. Nothing. No hidden speaker. No person in the vents. No sign of forced entry. One officer looked bored. Another looked apologetic. Could be echo from the plumbing, he said. I almost laughed. I think I might have been near tears. Then Denise pulled me aside. You need to stop provoking this, she whispered. I stared at her. Provoking what? She glanced toward the hallway. Whoever is doing it. That was the first time I realized she was afraid. Not of the machine. Of someone. The next morning, I found a folder in my email drafts that I did not remember creating. Inside were screenshots. My apartment building. My bus route. My grocery store. The cafe where I sat every Sunday morning pretending I was reading while I watched the rain. There was even a picture of the street outside my old therapist's office. The captions were in a voice I recognized with a sick feeling in my stomach. Mine, or someone almost matching it. The text said, "She still keeps the curtains open after dark. She still flinches when men stand behind her in line. She still thinks the quiet means she is alone." I called the number attached to the draft. A man answered on the first ring. "Hello, Lena," he said. I knew his voice. Not because I had met him in real life. Because I had heard him in voice notes. In the audio files. In the whisper under the ice machine. "Jonah." He sounded patient. Almost kind. "I didn't want you to find it like this," he said. My skin went cold. "What are you doing?" "Helping," he said. Something in the background clicked. A lighter. Maybe a door. Maybe a lock. "You're very easy to watch," he said. "People think privacy is a wall. It isn't. It's just a rhythm. Once you learn it, you can step in between." I could hear my own breathing getting sharper. "You're in the hotel." A small pause. "Sometimes." I slammed the phone down and ran. Not toward the lobby. Toward the security office. The door was unlocked. Inside, the monitor wall was on. Every camera in the building was live. The hallway feed showed the ice machine corridor. Empty. Then the image glitched. Jonah appeared in the frame. He was standing right in front of the machine, face half hidden by shadow, one hand resting on the metal panel like he knew exactly where to wait. He looked straight into the camera. Then he smiled. Not broadly. Not crazily. Just enough to make my stomach drop. The feed switched. The lobby camera. He was behind the front desk now, next to the coffee maker, staring at the lens with the same calm expression. Then the picture cut again. The elevator camera. He was inside, holding something black in his hand. A burner phone. I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Measured. I turned. Denise stood in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Don't move," she said. For one terrible second, I thought she was warning me. Then I saw the badge in her hand. Not a hotel badge. Police. She had been wearing it under her blazer. The truth unfolded in pieces after that, each one worse than the last. Jonah was not a contractor. He had been using fake credentials to enter the building for months. He had worked the maintenance rotation at 3 other properties under different names. He monitored people through hotel systems, stolen Wi-Fi access, cloned key cards, and hidden devices. The whispers had not been supernatural. They came from a mic channel routed through the drain housing. A crude setup meant to catch sound and feed it back through a speaker hidden in the utility wall. The warm ice cubes? He had been cycling the machine with a heating fault, then freezing contaminated water in short bursts to leave traces. The fingerprints were from latex molds, tiny replicas pressed into the water tray before freezing. He wanted us to notice. He wanted the fear to spread slowly. Denise had suspected something for weeks. She had been working with a detective after a guest reported a woman following them into the elevator at 2 a.m. The woman had been fake. Another identity. Another mask. Jonah had been collecting patterns. Routines. Responses. He targeted people after breakups, relocations, divorce filings, recent trauma. People who were already tired enough to doubt themselves. People like me. The arrest happened in the service stairwell after he tried to leave through the loading bay. There was shouting, flashing lights, rain on the pavement outside. I did not see much of it clearly, only the shape of him going rigid when officers pinned him to the wall. Only the look on his face when they pulled the burner phones from his coat. Not anger, not panic, Disappointment. That was what stayed with me, like I had failed him somehow. Afterward, the hotel was closed for inspection. The lobby lights were turned off. The ice machine was removed and hauled away in silence. The hallway felt too empty without it, too quiet. I expected to miss the noise, but I did not. I missed only the version of myself who had still believed the world was simple enough to explain. Police found thousands of files, voice recordings, fake profiles, photographs, messages sent to previous victims under old usernames and reused voices. He had been doing it for years, building people out of fragments, breaking them with intimacy. I moved out of the apartment a week later. I could not sleep there anymore. The silence had changed shape. Every vent sounded like a whisper. Every appliance seemed to remember him. Sometimes I still wake at night certain I hear the clatter of ice in a hallway that no longer exists. I no longer trust easy kindness. Not completely. Not at first. I no longer assume that what feels personal is safe. And I understand now that obsession does not always arrive as violence. Sometimes it arrives as attention, as recognition, as the illusion of being seen. The most dangerous people are not always the loud ones. Some of them speak softly. Some of them memorize your habits. Some of them learn the sound of your breathing through a drain and call it love. What happened to me did not end when the police closed the case. It changed the way I listen, the way I stand near doors, the way I notice reflections in windows, the way I check the dark before I speak my own name. Because privacy is not just about hiding. It is about having a self that cannot be easily entered. And once someone learns how to whisper your name from inside the walls, you never again feel entirely alone in a room that is supposed to be yours. Story 10. By the time the city turned black outside the windows, the cafe felt like a different building. Not empty, just emptied. The chairs were upside down on the tables. The espresso machine gave off its low mechanical heat. The air smelled like burnt milk, lemon cleaner, and wet wool from coats drying on the back hooks. Rain tapped the glass in thin, impatient fingers. Outside, neon from the pharmacy across the street bled into the puddles and made the sidewalk look underwater. I was the closing opener for the late shift, which meant I came in after the morning crew and stayed until the last customer drifted out. It sounded simple when I took the job. Simple was what I needed after the divorce. Simple was what I told myself when I moved into a studio apartment 2 blocks away, with a radiator that clanked all night and a silence that felt staged, like I had arrived after the rest of my life had already left. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A message from my ex. Just 2 words. "You look tired." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. We had not spoken in 11 days. He had the talent of still being able to wound me without being in the room. That was what an emotionally abusive relationship leaves behind. Not just memory. Reflex. A habit of bracing. I locked the phone, slid it away, and told myself not to think about it. Then the speaker system crackled above my head. "Thank you for staying late," a calm voice said. I froze. It was polite, smooth, slightly distorted, as if spoken through a cloth or from somewhere deep inside a wall. "Doors will secure in 10 minutes. Please complete final tasks and remain inside until the area has been counted." I looked up at the small black speaker in the corner by the pastry case. The red light was on. No one had been near the control panel. I stood there with a rag in my hand and listened to the final syllables fade into a soft hiss of static. Then the espresso machine clicked off. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next night, the same voice came through at 10:47. "Thank you for staying late. We've already counted everyone." No one spoke after that. The front doors stayed shut even though the neon open sign was still glowing in the window, and the lights above the counter were bright enough to make the rain outside look silver. I walked to the door and pushed. Nothing. I tried again, harder this time. The handle didn't move. Behind me, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the kitchen, a spoon slipped from a drying rack and hit the floor with a sharp metallic ring. The cafe was not locked. I knew that for certain. I had watched the manager unlock it with the staff code 20 minutes earlier. I had checked the deadbolt myself. I had heard the click. Yet the doors refused to open, and the voice had said counted. Not closed, not secured, counted. That word stayed with me long after my shift ended. My name is Mara, and 6 months ago I came to this city because it was far enough away from my old life that the streets did not know me. That was the plan. It did not stay that way. The first person to make me feel safe here was a man named Jonah. He came in near midnight 3 nights a week, always after the rush, always when the rain had begun to thin into mist. He wore dark coats and soft scarves and carried himself with the careful politeness of someone trying not to take up too much space. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, and sat at the table by the window where the streetlight cut a pale rectangle across the floor. He never asked for anything unusual. He never forced conversation. He just noticed things. "You always clean the espresso wand twice," he said one night, not looking up from his cup. "Most people miss the second pass." I laughed because it felt easier than asking how he knew to watch. "I've worked service jobs," he said. "You get good at noticing what keeps people calm." He had a low voice, controlled, warm but not performative, the kind of voice that made you stop guarding every sentence. I told myself that was all it was, a nice regular, a quiet man with good manners. Maybe I was lonely enough to confuse that with trust. He learned my routines too quickly. My shift ended at 11:30, unless the manager kept me for inventory. I took the back route home because the main street was louder and the intersection near the station made me anxious since the divorce. I always bought tea from the corner store on Tuesdays, and I always stood by the window for 30 seconds before leaving because I liked to see whether my apartment light was already on by mistake. Jonah knew all of it. One night he said, "You don't like the blue umbrella by the door. You always avoid it." I looked at him. "I'm sorry." He lifted one shoulder. "The one with the torn handle. You move around it every time you come in." I didn't realize I did that. "You do." Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe people notice things. Maybe I had become suspicious because I had spent 2 years being told I was too sensitive, too anxious, too much. I wanted to believe him. Then the messages started. First on dating apps. Then on Instagram. Then by email. Not threats. Not at first. Just attention. "You look better when you tie your hair back. You always choose the window seat. You still keep the blue mug at home." At home. I had never posted a photo of that mug. I sat on my bed in the dark, phone buzzing in my hand, the radiator clicking like teeth in the wall. I checked the sender. Fake profile. No real photo. A name that changed every other day. When I blocked one account, another appeared. Same tone. Same precision. Same calm. One voice note came in at 1:13 a.m. It was my own voice. I played it 3 times before I could breathe. "Don't make a scene," my voice said softly, almost gently. "You're safe when you listen." I sat up so fast my phone fell onto the blanket. My own voice. My exact cadence. My little hesitation before the last word. I deleted it, then checked the file details. The metadata had been scrubbed. Cleaned. Someone knew how to hide. The cafe announcement returned the next night. "Thank you for staying late. We've already counted everyone." This time the front doors stayed locked even after we finished the closing checklist. I turned the handle until my wrist hurt. The glass reflected my face back at me in the dark, pale and drawn and smaller than I remembered. Behind my reflection, the room seemed too deep, too still. Jonah was there, seated at the far booth, his coffee untouched. "Do you hear that?" I asked. He looked up slowly. "Hear what?" "The speaker." He studied me with an expression that was almost kind. "It sounds like a system message. It says we've already counted everyone." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "That's not what it said." I stared at him. "It said the doors will lock in 10 minutes. No, my throat had gone dry. "That's not what it said. Maybe you're tired." It was the first time he had ever used that tone. Soft, measured, like someone stepping toward an animal that might bolt. A minute later, when I reached for my phone, it buzzed in my hand. Unknown number. A text. "He can hear what you need to hear." The cafe swayed around me. I looked up too quickly. Jonah was still at the booth, still calm, still watching me like he was waiting for the shape of my fear to finish forming. I left the phone face down on the counter and told myself I was overreacting. I told myself that because the alternative was harder. The next day I searched his name online. Nothing useful. Too little. No LinkedIn. No tagged photos. No social media. A few outdated records that did not match. I tried reverse image search on the one picture he had once shown me, a blurry photo of a dog in snow. It belonged to someone else. That was the first crack. The second came from my apartment. I had been asleep when my phone vibrated against the nightstand. 3 missed calls, 2 emails, 1 new voicemail from an unknown number. When I played it, I heard breathing, then my own voice again, this time softer, closer. "I'm sorry," it said. "I didn't want you to find out this way." I sat up, heart hammering so hard it made my ribs ache. On the recorder, a faint sound in the background. A kettle boiling. My kettle. I had left it plugged in. I had left it on. My apartment door was locked. The chain was on. The window was shut. Still, I went through every room with the lights on, checking closets, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No one. But when I came back to the kitchen, my laptop was open. I was sure I had closed it. On the screen was a folder I had never seen before. Inside it were screenshots. My routes. My calendar. Photos taken through windows. Images from the cafe. From the street. From outside my apartment. And one folder named after me. Not my full legal name. The name only one person had ever used. Mara Bear. My ex had called me that when he wanted to soften me before asking for something cruel. I had not heard that nickname in years. I went cold all over. The next night I did not go to work. I sat in my apartment with the overhead light on, every lamp in the place burning, and waited for the phone to ring. Rain moved down the window in silver threads. Sirens passed somewhere far off. The radiator hissed. My stomach hurt from not eating. At 10:49, the cafe speaker message played through my laptop. I had not connected my laptop to any speaker, yet the voice came out of the tiny built-in screen with perfect clarity. "Thank you for staying late. We've already counted everyone." Then, after a pause, "Mara, please come to the front door." I dropped the laptop so hard it cracked the corner of the table. There was a knock. 3 measured taps. My breath stopped. Then a second knock. I did not move. A voice from the hallway. Calm. Familiar. "It's Jonah," he said. "Open the door." My eyes went to the deadbolt, then to the chain, then to my phone. 1 bar of signal. 1 missed call from a hidden number. Then another. And another. I called the police. My voice shook so badly I had to repeat my address twice. I told them someone was outside. I told them I had been monitored. I told them about the voice notes, the fake profiles, the cafe messages, the cloned audio, the way the system spoke as if it knew my life better than I did. The officer on the line asked me not to open the door. I laughed once, almost hysterically. I wasn't going to. There was another knock. Then silence. When the police arrived, Jonah was gone. But the cafe was not. They searched the building before sunrise. Behind the manager's office, inside a locked utility cabinet, they found a laptop, a small battery pack, a burner phone, and a compact audio interface wired into the speaker system. They found folders full of screenshots, my photos, my work schedule, the routes I took home, thousands of entries. Not just me, other names too, other women, different cities, same pattern, different personas, same handwriting. Jonah had never existed. Not fully. He was a mask, a repeatable shape, built from stolen images, old accounts, and carefully tuned language. A long-running obsession campaign. Multiple victims. Same emotional sequence. Same polite approach. Same descent into certainty. He did not just watch. He curated. He mirrored. He learned how to sound safe. And he had enough access to the cafe systems to make the speaker say whatever he wanted. The officer who showed me the evidence kept his voice low. as if speaking too loudly might make the whole thing more real. He was in the building more than we thought, he said, and he was using remote access to trigger the announcements. I sat in the back of the squad car with a blanket around my shoulders and watched dawn spread over the city. Rain had stopped. The windows were fogged at the edges. The streets looked washed clean, which felt obscene. They found him 2 days later in a rented apartment across town. No dramatic confrontation. No struggle worth turning into a story people would enjoy. Just a door opened by police and a room full of phones, notebooks, burner SIM cards, and printed photos of strangers living ordinary lives. Evidence, not mystery. The sort of thing that makes a person feel less haunted and more ashamed for having been fooled. But fooled is the wrong word. That would imply it was quick. It wasn't quick. It was patience. It was repetition. It was trust, borrowed one small piece at a time. I did not go back to that cafe. I found another job, another apartment. I changed my number. I locked my accounts down one by one, deleting old photos, revoking permissions, turning off every app that wanted to know where I was. The city kept moving. Rain still fell. Trains still screamed beneath the streets. Late-night buses still hissed to a stop in front of glowing windows. Sometimes I still wake up when my phone buzzes. Sometimes I still listen for breathing that is not mine. And sometimes, when I pass a cafe after closing, I hear a speaker crackle somewhere inside and feel my body go cold before my mind catches up. I survived. That is the truth. But survival is not the same as returning. Trust is a door that once opened easily for me. Now I check the locks twice, and even then I do not fully believe them. Privacy used to feel like a luxury. Now it feels like the last thin line between being a person and becoming a pattern someone else can study. I used to think obsession was loud. It is not. It is quiet, polite, careful. It knows your name before you decide to answer.